Hello and welcome to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. I'm your host, Reverend Mitch Austin. I am so excited about today's show. You know, this show was actually born out of a little class called Rise and Speak, where I take people on a 7-week journey to look at their lives, find a defining moment, put a little message around it, and then speak it on stage. And I'm so excited. Right now, I'm actually programming for the new year. So if you have a center or location where you think they would like to have this program, please reach out to me. And so when I was doing this program, what I noticed is people were talking about their lives and the defining moments. Everybody in the room was connecting with their stories, getting inspiration, feeling uplifted. And I thought, wouldn't it be great someday if I had a show where I would bring people on and we would just look at their lives and the defining moments and get some inspired kind of spiritual food to guide us along our way. So that is how Change Your Story, Change Your Life came about. And I am so excited to have our guest today, Ellie Pechet. Ellie is a metaphysician, medium, shaman, and author with over 33 years of intuitive counseling experience, as well as working in the energy healing field. She works mostly remote with clients all over the world. Her success rate is over 93% of her clients experience a permanent healing, either emotional or physical. And this sets her apart from a lot of other healers, practitioners, and therapists. Ellie has the ability to do medical intuitive scans to identify the root causes of physical symptoms and pinpoint energy blocks. Amazing. Ellie also heals depression, grief, PTSD, anxiety, emotional abuse, specific traumas, insomnia, and viruses such as COVID-19, Lyme disease, HPV, chronic pain, fibromyalgia, and many other emotional and physical symptoms. Ellie is also a medium and dialogues with the deceased, as well as helping those who are stuck here, earthbound, go back to the light. Ellie is the author of a book, Hitchin' a Ride, a guide to earthbound spirits and how they affect you. Welcome to the show, Ellie. Oh, there's the book. Fabulous, fabulous. So glad you could be on the show today.
Thanks, Mitch. I'm really glad to be here. It's nice to meet with you again.
Yes, and I love how you have love behind you. We can never have too much love. It's like a little halo above your head.
That's right.
So, Ellie, I know you've had quite a journey in your life, so many amazing stories when we talked. Ellie, if your life was a book, what would the title be?
Probably From Challenges to Empowerment.
Well, tell me more. Like when you say challenges, now, one thing I do know is that your parents had a lot of their own challenges before you came into the world.
Yes, they did. They survived growing up in the atmosphere of the Holocaust in Romania, and then they had that baggage that they carried with them. And I shouldn't call it baggage; it sounds disrespectful. They had, I think, a lot of trauma that they brought with them when they immigrated to the United States, and then they were in a completely different environment, with a different language, having to set up a life, and they had no support for what they had experienced with the war. So I think that really impacted them and the family.
Yeah, actually my mom too survived the Holocaust, and she lived on a concentration camp. And I noticed that her trauma manifests a lot as fear and paranoia about people and about saying too much and just kind of keeping to yourself. Like that was her survival mechanism, and it didn't go away just because she left the war and came to America. Like it was just kind of ingrained in her. And I remember after 9/11, she didn't want me to go anywhere. And I was getting on planes. I was going to Hawaii. I was doing, I was doing New Year's in San Francisco, and she was convinced that if they're going to strike anywhere, it's going to be a major city, and I shouldn't go anywhere for New Year's. And that was just her mentality, and she kept trying to put it on me. I mean, were there things that your parents were trying to put on you from their trauma?
Yeah, I'd say one example that comes to mind is security. My mother was always really overly cautious, um, and about keys and door locks, and wanted to have an alarm in every house that we lived in.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt like I was, in a little bit of a prison physically, because I'm much more of a free spirit, and I would have liked to be able to open the windows if I wanted to, and just be more in the flow. So yeah, that's one example. She was also a screamer.
Oh no.
If
Yeah.
I asked her what was for dinner, just like a normal kid question, "Hey mom, what's for dinner?" She'd start screaming how she wasn't a restaurant and that I'd eat what she gave me. So there was a lot of yelling going on. And I'm a quiet person. So
Yeah.
anyway,
So speaking of challenges, I understand that there were some challenges with your family because you were kind of the different one.
yeah, yes, I was. I tended to be more quiet. I am pretty quiet by nature. And as you know, the saying "still waters run deep" really applies to how I see myself. And I was an observer. I mean, I like to watch, observe people, what makes them tick, my environment, and I think it made them feel uncomfortable because
Mhm.
it's kind of like if you're hiding stuff and someone is looking at you, you feel I don't know, like they might find out your secrets. I think that's what was behind uh, them feeling uncomfortable just with me, with my presence, with
Mm,
who I was.
mm,
Because yeah, I'm a thinker, and I watch, and I'm a deep feeler,
mm,
and so and I was deeply spiritual from the get go.
mhm.
And so I was different in that way also. Like I knew that I was here to make a difference. I might not have known that consciously growing up,
Right.
but when I landed, I don't know. Somehow I knew that this was a life that I was here to help people, and make a positive difference while I'm here.
Yes, thinker and observer. How Scorpio of you. We're
Yes.
both Scorpios, so there we go. I totally get that.
I think we both have birthdays next week, right?
I know, it's so exciting. It's so great.
When's yours?
I'm sorry?
Is yours the 17th?
It is. How about yours?
15th.
That's right, we're 2 days apart. Look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's awesome.
Great minds think alike, and great hearts.
And you have many gifts too that didn't weren't apparent right away, as I understand, but as you went on your journey of healing, they started to reveal themselves to you. Is that true?
Yeah, I'd say I started to um, come into alignment with my natural gifts in my 20s,
Hmm.
which is when I started my spiritual journey. And and counseling for myself so that I could really, just get clarity and healing on what I had been through growing up. And yeah, I discovered that my greatest gift is sending energy, sending healing energy with my hand. And I can pull somebody's headache out that I'm working with online over the screen. I can literally put my hand up to their head and pull out their headache. Whatever else, whatever else is needed. I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but just a quick example that comes to mind is a woman's kidney stones. She called me in excruciating pain on a weekend, and I dropped what I was doing to work with her and help her. And I was able to dissolve the kidney stones in that one session online.
And did she get a scan later and they were gone and all that?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because I hear that's really painful. That's like having a baby.
I've heard that too.
Was she crying when you first got like, oh, help me?
Almost. I mean, she was writhing and tossing and turning on the sofa, and I'm glad I was able to help her with that and a few other things.
So people don't generally, when they're 6 years old, when somebody asks, what do you want to be when you grow up? They don't generally say, an energy healer or a medium or a shaman, right? Those aren't typical things that typically children would say. But how did you start to wake up to that you could do this, that you could send energy and heal people? I mean, what was that moment, or what happened that you kind of went, oh, I could do this?
Yeah. Well, Mitch, I didn't have one of those rosy stories as a kid where, everything was hunky-dory and I realized and I knew that I was a psychic. I was literally just trying to survive growing up in that house. And so when I was out of the house and a young woman, I started to unravel and kind of undo the thick rope because I wanted to understand myself a lot better, and I wanted to know. I wanted to come into clarity about my purpose for being here, and I knew that I had to work on myself, get myself to a place that I was healed enough that I could help others. And I wanted to get clear on what the best use of me was and is this lifetime. So I was prepared to do whatever it took to be of service.
Yeah, that's a very powerful intention, I think, when we drop into that soul space and we ask that kind of question, like, what is the highest and best use of my life in this journey? Like, what am I really here to do? And when we ask that in a really deep and granular way, we get sent on a little adventure, usually with the answer unfolding. Was that your experience?
Yeah, very much. I discovered that I had a strong psychic ability, and then I realized that I was also a medium because I could hear messages. I could see people that were in spirit who had messages for a person or people that I was sitting with. And when I gave those messages, they were always really comforting and healing, and it sometimes even brought closure to the person receiving the message. And so anytime that I can help another person, I feel like I'm on purpose. I'm on track with what I'm here to do. And then a little bit later, I discovered that I'm a natural born shaman. It wasn't something that I went after because I thought it would be cool to be a shaman. Like, I really don't care about being cool. I care about being of service.
Right.
And the way that I discovered Do you want me to tell you how I discovered
Well,
that?
but before you dive into that, I guess, I'm really curious about the mediumship because I actually have mediumship skills too. And I remember the first time I actually did a reading, it blew my mind. I mean, can you remember the first time that you did this? You went, oh, I'm talking to like, was there a moment around that you could share?
Yeah. I was going to a spiritualist church in Massachusetts.
And what is a spiritualist church, just so our audience knows?
Well, it's they're to sum it up in a nutshell, their belief is they believe very strongly that uh, that people continue beyond the place of death or leaving the body.
Yeah, beyond this. Yeah.
Beyond the physical, absolutely. And so I was actually sitting in a class, or well, it wasn't really a class. It was more of a group, a circle in which people were, free to give messages that they got to each other.
Mhm.
And that was like great fun for me. I loved it. And then I started hearing messages for others, and it was fun. It was exciting. And again, for me, it always comes back to being helpful, being useful. If I can help another person, I feel like I'm on track.
Absolutely. And I do love, I've been to a spiritualist church, and I love how they naturally embrace the wisdom and messages that come from the other side to this side. It's almost like we're in this big team exercise, and some of us have these and some of us don't, but we're all trying to help each other, along this unfolding of our souls,
Yeah,
and I love spiritualist churches because they normalize something that much of society finds taboo,
yeah.
and embraces it in a really positive and healthy way. And when you were doing those readings, Ellie, were you getting confirmation from the people? Were people going, oh yeah, yeah, she used to say that, or oh yeah, she wore that, or whatever it was? Were you getting?
Absolutely. In fact, there's something called evidential mediumship, and that's one of my strengths. And what that means is being able to provide evidence of the person who I'm giving the message uh, from, and that can be certain sayings that they had, certain words that they would use,
Yes.
their appearance, their physical appearance, as well as their what they might be wearing, specific things that were specific to that person, that the person I'm giving the message to completely recognizes that I have their person.
Yeah. I actually, because I did go to a meetup group and I did a reading for someone, and I was able to describe the woman's hair and vocation specifically. And they're like, oh yeah, that was her. She did that. And oh my God, she did. She had the frosted hair. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm seeing her right now. So, and it's so much fun to do that. And I love that you do that. So we are going to have to take a commercial break. I don't want anyone to run away, because when we come back, we're going to hear more about this shaman unfolding that Ellie went through. So come right back. Just short commercial. See you in a second.
Get inspiration in an instant. God calls are the gentle and uplifting moment of truth to help you remember that the bright light of God's love is shining right now as you.
It's your God call with Reverend Bill.
Start your 2-week free trial today, and you'll get a phone call 4 times a week from Reverend Bill with an uplifting half-minute message filled with insight, wisdom, story, and fun.
Let your light shine.
You can answer the call to listen to it live, or let it go to voicemail so you can hear it later. After the free trial, your subscription is just $5.95 a month. The details are at godcall.org. God calls are disruptive, intentionally.
Whenever you write something, put on a gold star.
They take you away from your routine to remind you about the truth of who you really are. They come at random times between 8:15 a.m. and 6 p.m., so you won't be expecting them. And somehow, the message is exactly what you need to hear at the time.
Magic is loose in the world.
It's a moment of motivation in the middle of your day. Find out more and start your 2-week free trial now at godcalled.org.
And who says God doesn't ever call us? Literally. I love that. God calls. Check it out. It sounds like a good time, and we could all use a little more inspiration. So Ellie, oh my gosh. Okay. So we talked a little bit about your mediumship experience and how that all got kicked off. Now let's kind of dive into the shaman revelation. Like what happened in your experience where you started to connect with this part of you?
Sure. Well, I remember I was in my Buzzards Bay office. I was I had recently started my private practice, and that's after being kicked out of the mainstream counseling agency for bringing a young woman's mother through in mediumship, and they didn't like that too much. So that was my push to get out on my own and start doing my real gifts and my real service, which is a lot more than counseling. Counseling is important. It's the foundation of my healing practice. But really the intuitive part, the mediumship and shamanic part are much more, much higher level than just counseling, and help people accelerate their healing much faster, which is why I do it. So back to your question about my start as a shaman. So I was in my Buzzards Bay office. I was meeting with a client, and all of a sudden I had this awareness that there wasn't the spirit of an old woman inside of this client, sitting across from me. And I'd never read about that. It just, like I say, it just happened. I had the awareness. And then the next thing was I had the memory and the knowing of how to energetically go into the client and dialogue with the spirit of the old woman who was inside of her and was afraid to leave. And I talked with her, and I told her what it would be like, and how important it was that she continue her journey as a soul and go back home. And eventually she felt safe and let me, and I still remember this, she let me carry her out of the client and send her on her journey back to the light.
That's powerful. Wow. And you and I had a discussion about this. I remember that. What happens when we leave and how we're still at choice, whether we move towards the light and there's different reasons people don't move towards the light. That's been your experience, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's why I wrote this book. This book was a lot of work, and it's about 19 years worth of the branch of my work as a shaman.
Yeah.
Identifying spirits who become earthbound, and then sending them to the light. I can also dialogue with them. I can find out, why they attach to a particular person. And sometimes and the book talks about, some earthbound spirits are karmic, and there's a story, there's something that they're upset about. They have a grievance with the person they've attached to. So they will tell me the grievance. I will then tell the client, and then walk them through a special process that I do, in which the client makes amends with the spirit, and then I touch in with the spirit again and ask if they're satisfied, and they usually are, and they're willing to go to the light, and then I help them return to the light. So it ends up being a healing for both the client and the spirit who has been upset.
Oh, that makes absolute sense. Yes, I can totally see that. Wow. And do you also deal with like any of the Akashic records or like, because I've heard of this about past life leading into current lives and how it gets tangled up.
Can you ask the question again?
Well, yeah. So, like, I know sometimes, I mean, I remember hearing stories of someone having like abdominal pain, and in a past life they were shot there. But in this life, they're having the echo of the pain from the previous life. Do you ever run into anything like that?
That is a great question. Absolutely, a lot.
Mm.
And a lot of times when people have, especially if it's a chronic physical situation, condition, or pain, a lot of times I can trace it to a past life in which, like you said, like it could be somebody has a chronic shoulder issue, and I might trace it back to a past life in which they were stabbed by an arrow, maybe in a Native American or other life, whatever it is. I'll get the story and then I will clear it. That's my technique. That's what I do. And the reason that it's effective, as effective as it is because I clear the issue in this life, current time, and any past life pattern for that issue. So every session, what I clear is complete.
Mm. And do people ever come to you for like non-body things? Like, do people ever come to you because they can't seem to sustain a relationship, or they're always broke, or there's just some pattern that keeps repeating in their life?
Yeah, that's the emotional aspect of issues that I clear, like what you just mentioned, and it could be also. I work really well with depression, bringing somebody who is grieving to a place of peace. Usually within 1 or 2 sessions, she or he will be at peace about the person that they've been grieving. Could be for years, and 1 or 2 sessions, and they're at peace, and they're able to, get back on their feet and move forward with their life again. Same
Yeah.
thing with anxiety, weight issues, could stem from issues in this life and also have a connection in 1 or more past lives.
Right.
Yeah. So
So I love the grief part, because you had told me this really cool story about how grief was actually linked to this man's eyesight.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that story? How did that? What unfolded with that?
Yeah, a friend of mine brought her father to me when her mother died, and his wife of 65 years. And she was his best friend. They were soulmates. They were lifelong companions. And when she died, it was really, really difficult for him to be without her. And one of the things that happened was not only was he grieving, but his eyesight got affected and he had to wear special glasses to drive. Otherwise, it was completely blurry.
Oh.
So I worked with him for a number of sessions, and I cleared the grief. And, well, actually, before I even cleared the grief, I linked the eyesight issue that had developed to him not being able to see that his beloved wife was no longer there in the physical.
Yeah, it's almost like the body rises up to protect you from this overwhelming, emotional event that you're having in your mind, right? It's like your body rises up to try and protect you from your mind, from the grief, from the pain.
It's the body, mind, spirit connection. And that's just one really good example. So when I cleared his inability to see that she was no longer there, his eyesight improved, and he didn't have to keep wearing the special glasses. And I also healed his grief.
Wow. Wow. How powerful that is, because, you know, it's like you're giving this higher level of quality of life in a way that, you know, conventional medicine can only do so much. You know, it kind of goes to where it can go, and then that's it. And you either live with that or you find another way. And because I know I had my own experience with this when I had my, you know, physical event several years ago. And then I went on a journey of healing, and I was open to anything: energy healers, prayers. I would eat long grass if I had to. I didn't care. I just wanted to heal. And learned a lot about the body, its capacity to heal, spirit, energy. And there's so much that we don't know. There's just so much that we don't know. So I'm so grateful for you. And I have a question, Ellie. You know, clearly what you do is not in the mainstream yet. I'm hoping someday that it will be more mainstream. Are you finding that it's becoming more acceptable and more mainstream? I mean, what is your experience? You've been doing this for a while, so I'm assuming you have some like vision of the landscape of this work.
Well, if you want me to be honest, which is important,
Please.
I'm not going to give you the answer that we would all like to hear. I would like to say that, yeah, we're all, you know, becoming more open and accepting about a lot of the spiritual dimensions that exist. And I can't really say that. I feel like in some ways, mainstream society has gone backwards. And my hope is that it's temporary. You know, sometimes it's 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, and then 4 steps forward. So I'd like to, you know, envision that happening. But right now, I feel like we're still in a backward place, and I think some of what has to do with that is the news. You know, it scares people, and it's vivid, and a lot of people watch the news and then they're influenced by it, and so they retreat more rather than expand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's been a heightened level of sensational fear, I think, in the news than even just 10 or 15 years ago. It's like it just keeps going to another level of intensity, and it's almost like media has gotten better and better at hitting the fear button in people's consciousness.
And that's how they control the people. That's how the people are controlled, is by instilling fear and maintaining the fear, right? We know this because, and so then it brings us back to what I think of as kind of the you know, the fight between light and dark, you know, good and evil. Well, if good is making progress, then the dark side will kick and scream and be really loud and do what it can to stop that progress.
Well, yeah, there are two sides of one coin, and that progress is always a forward back motion.
Yeah.
You know? And you know, it's interesting because I'm a transgender man, and many people come up to me and they're like, well, what do you think about what's going on with all the laws and everything? And I said, well, there was a time that nobody was talking about transgender people. We were invisible. And part of progress is being visible. And when you're visible, that means you might have some resistance. And if you have resistance, you know where to push to get past it. And until you can see that and know that, you can't make progress. It's
right.
part of the deal.
That's right.
And we can either look at that as bad or wrong or things failing, or we can look at that as the path of healing that has unfolded, I believe, for thousands of years since we've been on the planet. You know, I guess we're at choice that way. But I like to believe, and from what I've seen, especially from the younger generation, that there's this wave of souls coming onto the planet that are much more open at the top. If you talk to young people now about gender expression and sexuality and everything, there's no resistance to any of it.
That's right. That's right.
None.
So you're right, Mitch. The evolution is happening in spite of the dark side kicking and screaming and wanting to prevent it. It is happening, and people are coming in. Babies are being born more evolved, perhaps even than we were when we were born. And that's human evolution. That's the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to evolve. We're not supposed to stay stuck or stagnant. So, and there are a lot of circles and groups that meet. Maybe not so. They're not that much in the mainstream yet,
Yes.
but they are evolved, and people can be themselves and talk about and share their gifts with each other, and I find that really inspiring.
Well, and that's a big part of what has been kind of my soul's pull is to get people to be transparent, because the more we show ourselves, the more we tell our stories, good, bad, or ugly, whatever you want to call it, versus the world's kind of measuring stick, because let's face it, the world has a measuring stick, right? But when we transcend that measure and we start to look at people's souls' journeys as perfect for them, whatever it was, whether it included addiction or divorce or whatever it was, and we can find that lesson or blessing, it starts to make sense. And that judging stick doesn't. It just kind of falls apart. I think all falsity falls apart in the light of truth. Because I suspect when you're working with a client and you tell them the truth, whether it's about their healing or their past life or the person on the other side, they hear it. They don't need a lot of explanation. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, very much, and that's part of the work that I do with clients. Is I can access a much higher level of information that is going to be helpful and help them shift.
Yeah. But what about the naysayers? I mean, do you run into skeptics or critics, or how do you deal with that when you run into any of that, if you have?
Well, the clients who find me and are drawn to me, they're usually really ready to heal, and to heal in a significant way. It's might be their parents or their children, or a friend who's not as open and still needs help, and so I work with them too, but not directly. Necessarily. I will check with their higher self of the child or the relative, and ask if I have permission to work with them. And I almost always get a yes, because a person's higher self always wants what's best for their person. And then I work with a picture that the client sends me, and just a little bit of information, like what the symptoms are, what the main issues are. Is it a broken heart, grief, depression, a phobia, whatever it is. And I will put the picture on my iPad and then work with them that way. And I actually was able to get a client's daughter to stop smoking, and she was chain smoking, and I tried everything and wasn't successful. I worked with her picture and with a little bit of information, and she stopped smoking.
Wow. That's huge. That is amazing. I love to hear that, because I think it gives people hope. I think, I had a client recently who she just run out of hope. And I had to remind her that if it's a problem, by definition, it has a solution. Otherwise, it's a permanent condition.
Hope is always the first step, Mitch. Always in the work is a person has to have hope to take the next step forward.
Yes, or it can't get in. The healing can't get in. Yes, yes. Well, don't go away. We're going to do one more commercial, one more short little commercial, and then we'll be back with Ellie Pechet. Don't go away. Hello, and welcome back to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. We're here with my guest, Ellie Pechet, who is a medium, a shaman, an energy healer, an author, so many amazing things. And we were just talking about how important it is to have hope, to be receptive that things could be different or could change or could heal, that there's higher ground available wherever we find ourselves on our journey. And so we were just talking about that. And a question kind of came up for me in my mind, Ellie, is there a client or something that you're most proud of? Like, was there a particularly heart fulfilling? I know all of your healing work is heart fulfilling, but something that really stands out that you did in your work? Because you've been doing this for what, 33 years, right?
Been a long time.
Yeah. What, if any, moments stand out in that time span that you could share with us?
Sure. Well, you speaking about hope and us agreeing about how important that is reminded me of a client that I worked with on Cape Cod a few years ago. And he, it's funny how sometimes spirit will bring me together with people who need my help, and I end up working with them, and we meet in a really interesting way. Like this guy owned some cottages along the Cape, and I had always wanted to stay in one, and I had planned a little vacation, and I rented one of the cottages and connected with the owner, and one thing led to another, and he asked what I do, and I told him I heal people. And turns out that he really needed my healing. He had been suffering from Meniere's disease and vertigo for years, ever since he had been working on something, and it was Christmas Day, and he was bent over fixing something, and he forgot that there was a cement shelf above his head.
Oh,
and,
no.
Yeah, he got up really hard and really fast, and he created a very serious brain injury.
Oof.
And that started his path of trying to find solutions to heal the Meniere's disease and the vertigo that set in after that. He'd have to stop what he was doing in the middle of the day because it would come over him, the dizziness. He'd have to lie down. It was very disruptive, and he had lost all hope. Speaking of hope, he thought he was going to have to live with this the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So I worked with him for, I think it was maybe between 4 and 6, maybe 6 sessions, and was able to heal both the Meniere's and the vertigo.
Wow.
And the first session, what came up that he needed the most was for me to clear his sense of hopelessness about his life and his future.
Wow.
And then the imprint was hopeful. So I cleared hopeless about his life, and then I imprinted him, and I work with the neural pathways which is where things really tend to get stuck and where they can also respond really well, which is why I do the clearing first and then I do the energetic imprint. And sure enough, when he came to me his second session, he was feeling hopeful and he was ready, and I took care of the rest of it. And then now he's retired. He sold the cottages. He's living in another state and he's happy and he's good.
Blessed be. Yeah, that part of hope is so important, that we need to remember that our participatory part in the process is that there is hope. I need to remember there's hope, right? And clearly he must have had some hope because he came to you, right? If he didn't even have a little bit of hope, he wouldn't even bothered, right?
I'm glad he had a little bit of hope, but you know what, Mitch? A lot of people do feel hopeless, and they need help with becoming hopeful and
Yes.
and knowing that there is a solution and a cure for something that they might have been dealing with that's very painful.
Yeah, I think that's really the biggest battle of the mind. You know, I remember with that client that I had met with not too long ago, he was just ready to give up.
Yeah.
You know, and I just refused to allow him to do that, and really kind of got into the trenches with him, saying, look, if this is a problem, there's a solution, and we need to remember this. And if there's a solution and we're working with a power that is all powerful and all loving, then it is in partnership, right? And just kind of building back that vision that's pushing away the naysaying of the mind, because the mind has a fear bias. It has a negativity bias. That's how we're biologically built for survival purposes, but then it works against our healing journey. And I know in my work, that's been a big challenge, and it sounds like it's been a bit of a challenge in your work as well.
Yes.
So, well, thank you for sharing that. So, you know, Ellie, we had talked about a little bit about the signature question, which I want to get into in a minute. And I know sometimes when I ask people this question, it's such a big question, you know, what story could I share from my life, you know? But the question goes like this. Somebody comes to you, they're writing the book of life, and it's going to serve as inspiration and guidance for generations to come. And they want a story from your life. What story of inspiration or wisdom would you pick, and why?
I forget what we said when we first started talking today.
Well, I think one thing you and I were talking about is that the universe clearly wanted you to do this work, that mainstream working didn't work for you, right? And what was that last straw that brought you into this work kind of full time?
Yeah, I just lightly touched on it a little while ago. I was working in a mainstream counseling agency, and a young woman was sent to me because she was starting to go down kind of a self-destructive path with, you know, starting to experiment with drugs and sexually, you know, not being careful. And so the school psychologist referred her to my agency, and this is where, you know, spirit comes in and does what it does, and assigned her to me for counseling. And her first session, I remember it like it was yesterday. Her mother, who had died suddenly in an alcohol-related car accident, she was right there, and she wanted me to tell her daughter that she was there and what had happened, and give her some other meaningful information. And I trusted my intuition, and I said, I can't do it today. Let me build a little bit of a bond and a rapport with her, so she trusts me. Right. And I will next time. And so she had to wait. Her mother had to wait until her second session, but I did keep my word, and I brought her through. I shared with the daughter everything that the mother wanted her to know. And, it accomplished what I wanted, which was for the daughter, really for both of them, to have closure.
Yeah.
And the client was so excited when she left. The next day she went and went to the school psychologist and told her what happened. I mean, she was just happy, thrilled.
Oh.
And the school psychologist was not of like mind and called my supervisor at the agency and told her that, this cannot be, and this mediumship. And so I was called into the office, and I was told they were going to have to let me go. And I know it was a little bit scary, but you know what, Mitch? Not for a second did I ever regret what I did. I try to live my life by do the right thing at the right time, especially when it's going to help someone. And I had no regrets about bringing her mother through, because I knew that she really needed that. They both needed that. And I also recognized it as, you know what, it's time for me to go fully on my own so that I can work using my deeper gifts, my spiritual and intuitive gifts.
Yes.
For the clients that I work with. And so that was really the launch.
Yeah, and I remember, and thank you so much for sharing that in such great detail, because what you and I had talked about this story, being in the book of life for future generations, is that, there are times when the pressures of the world and the expectations it has of us comes up against doing what we know is right. Right. And picking what's right versus what we're being pushed to do. Because if we allow, the world's demands to trump what we know is right, that's when all of the bad stuff can happen. I remember seeing this picture. It was a black and white picture of young people dressed up in their work attire, laughing and walking on their way to something. And the caption was, these were the German workers who were on their way to their job, which was a concentration camp that they helped run.
Interesting.
So they were complicit in this, right? They were part of the genocide and not rising up to what I'm sure some piece of them must have been knocking at their consciousness, that this was not okay. And so that's why those things can happen. And I love that your story kind of demonstrates doing the right thing over, this idea of safety and our real safety lies in all of us doing the right thing, right? And answering our soul's call, right? That's the real collective safety.
It's so important, Mitch. And that's what heroes are. Heroes are people who don't think about consequences or second guess what needs to be done.
Yeah.
They just stop what they're doing and they rise to the occasion, and they do the right thing at the right time.
They do the right thing. And thank God you did the right thing at the right time, because look at this beautiful journey this has sent you on to heal so many people who've lost hope, who have no other place to go with their pain and their circumstance. And so I'm so grateful that you said yes.
Oh, thanks, Mitch. Yes, no, that's true. I do it a lot with animals, animals that are in need, that or suffering or need some help, when I'm going about my day or on my travels. And I will literally stop what I'm doing and show up and help them. I helped a duck. I mean, this is many, many years ago, just one one example, but I helped a duck cross several busy streets with her ducklings.
I love it, Ellie. I love it. That just shows your heart, right? Your heart. I love that. So,
Thank you.
Ellie, how can people get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you or contact you? And I think you have a show special for anyone who's interested in working with you.
Yes. Well, my email is ellie@phoenixrisinghealing.com. People can also go to my website,
Mm-hmm.
and that is phoenixrisinghealing.com. And I still give out my phone number, which is 508-237-4929. And, if anyone has any questions, I provide, like a 15 to 20 minute free consultation. And so they can connect with me. Yep. I'm a little old school in some ways. You're probably picking that up.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing
Yep,
wrong.
and I am actually running a fall sale on sessions, whether it's one session or group discount sessions. And the special that I'd like to offer your listeners is that if they call me the day that they hear the show, and let me know that they heard your show and heard us.
Yes.
If they sign up for one or more sessions, I will throw in a free 30-minute either mediumship reading, a soul reading, or past life reading.
Ooh, I love that. Oh, fantastic. Wow. The fall special and another free reading of 30 minutes. Blessed be. Thank you for that generous
You're
offer
welcome.
here. So appreciate that. And thank you again for being on the show.
Oh, it's been
So,
fun. It's been great.
So I want to thank New Thought Media Network for hosting this show so we can meet amazing people like Ellie Pechet and we can continue to tell our stories, shine our light, and be on this journey together. Please consider donating right there. There we got a link, newthoughtmedia.org. If you just click on that link, you can donate. And look, even just $5, even like a Starbucks coffee, all of it adds up because we got big plans. We want to take this on to Roku and all kinds of places, right? We've just begun this amazing journey here on New Thought Media Network. And I also have some programs coming up. I have Metaphysical Parables coming up in December. So if anyone's interested in that, I have a workshop for that. That's going to be online. So anywhere you are, you can join in on that. And look, if you don't have a relationship with the Bible and you want to see it from a different perspective as a metaphysical handbook, it's amazing. It's amazing once we start working with the translation of the symbolisms. Like, for instance, tree means connection between heaven and earth. Who knew? So I also want to thank 18 Source Studios, where I'm broadcasting from right now. They do audio and visual productions here in Sacramento area. Also, I'm so grateful for Zoe, our producer. Thank you, Zoe, for all your help today. And be sure to tune in next week at 11 a.m. on November 15th. We're going to have singer and entertainer Cerise Patron. Oh my gosh, you guys need to hear her story. It's amazing. So until next time, share your story, share your life. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching.